you on this video series. How are you today?
I'm very well. How are you?
Good. We decided to do this video series just because we were both seeing this magnitude of change on the horizon for finance and finance functions and finance organizations. And this change is dramatic. So it seems like we're kind of at this turning point with finance operations. Would you agree?
Yes, very much so. I believe that finance is really on the cusp of a major transformation of its identity, where both the job description and how it's done will change as a result of these technologies that we now have available to us. And so this presents a great opportunity for finance to work together with the functions, gain more influence, improve decision-making, strategic decisions for the entire company. And that is what I'm seeing, and that is why I'm so excited about this change.
Me too. And I would say that not only is the decision-making in companies, regardless of whether they're finance companies or not, going to improve, it's going to be founded on a great deal more information, more insight, as you've said. But not only that, it can happen at a faster and faster pace, which is kind of commensurate with where we are at in this post-millennium world of everything all the time at faster and faster speeds. So looks like it's coming at just the right time to help us all look forward in what we're doing.
Yes, and this is really why we have put this video series together, is to empower finance professionals at all levels in their ability to take advantage of these opportunities that technology has presented to us.
Great.
Hello, and welcome to our video series on cloud computing and AI, considerations for finance and insurance professionals. My name is Elena. I'm the principal and founder of OTB Advisory, focused on major finance projects such as automation and digital transformation. In this series, we will talk about how technology has been shaping the finance and insurance functions. Linda and I wanted to share our thoughts and experiences about practical tools and a balance between pushing forward and being sensitive to the impacts of change. We hope that it will help you generate ideas that you can use in your work and business. I will talk about these topics. I will cover the current technological landscape and explain the technical concepts that form the foundation of these technologies. Later in the series, we will also cover the practice implications, demo several business applications that illustrate both the concepts and the solutions, and also talk about the leadership and management of digital transformation initiatives. We will look at the specific management and leadership approaches that will help these initiatives achieve their expected results. The concepts we'll cover in the intro section are for cloud computing and artificial intelligence. This is not intended to be an in-depth discussion. It is rather just to shape the context for talking to IT professionals and evaluating technology that is already available or will be available soon for finance and insurance applications.
Hello, I'm Dr. Linda Miller, President and founder of iMind Transformation, which is a consulting firm that specializes in the organizational, culture, and identity transformation associated with digital transformation and business transformation. What we do is we bring pre-millennium companies into the success factors that are required to meet the challenges of the post-millennium business world. I'm also the founder of the Continuous Transformation Management Framework, which is a set of methods, practices, and tools oriented toward continuous digital and business transformation. What these do is build a capability for the organization to face successive radical change year over year that is interconnected. My career roots are in hands-on implementation of leading-edge business technologies, and for the last 20 years, I've been leading digital transformations and corporate restructures. The two subjects I'm going to discuss are the capability maturity needed to harness the potential of AI and cloud computing, and the shifts in thinking and ways of working that are necessary to make effective use of AI and cloud computing in finance companies and functions. Before Elena discusses why it's important to talk about AI and cloud computing for finance, I'm going to do a brief history of time version of how we arrived at the place where these technologies came into being. First, it's important to trace how we arrived at the place where real-time computing was necessary and important. Most finance organizations still have these three ways of computing on hand. And it's necessary to say at this point that client-server and internet-based computing are and will continue to be the subject of systems integration, data integration for many years to come. While mainframe processing, on the other hand, is fast disappearing and may take on new forms in the future, but I won't comment on that here. In short terms, the internet has provided the opportunity for customers to do more of the processing work in their relationship with their service providers. They're happy to do so, since trying to reach their service providers during hours of work using one-shot systems that are difficult to use was just becoming untenable. So on-demand, real-time processing was seen to be a win-win for both consumer and supplier. Now, the notion of on my time, on my terms came into the corporate radar as data warehouses and business intelligence began offering competitive advantages. As globalization and the emergence of smartphones started to produce more and more volumes of data to work with and offered new insights into how businesses might scale or might evolve cost effectively, the need for more sophisticated standards, more sophisticated regulation to protect the consumer also emerged. If we consider the period of time when these conditions took root between, say, 1995 and 2010, it's easy to correlate the constriction of funding as a driving factor for the creation of new forms of shared computing and computing resources. Companies saw the potential of unified systems, of course, and data services across their global offices, and the possibility of taking automation of simple tasks to the next level, thereby creating labor efficiencies. As in all things, one step leads to another, and the groundwork in cloud computing provided a jumping off point for a quantum leap in process streamlining, whereby more work could be processed through the existing labor pool and yield greater decision-making intelligence at the same time, and the ability to change direction and adapt to new conditions very, very quickly. Now, it only stands to reason that AI is in its infancy and will need more and more and greater processing power to grow and to continue to be leveraged to finance organizations. And so a quantum computing now comes onto the scene as a processing backbone that offers new dimensions in storage capability without the degradation in response time. With this history in mind, I'll hand over to Elena to talk about the specifics of cloud computing and artificial intelligence and how they're cornerstones of finance digital transformation heading into the future.
Thank you so much, Linda. I thought we would begin with a brief overview of where we are today using the cloud. And I'd like to highlight a few statistics on this slide. First, IT budgets allocated to the cloud are growing and are expected to increase by over 50% by 2024. Why is this happening? Well, the key benefits of the cloud for users is the economies of scale, expandability, global information and remote access, cross-departmental communication, and computing power, including big data. The most common application of the cloud today is for accessing applications remotely and for processing information, and these uses are growing. We can see that virtually all companies today have some form of cloud use, with 30% of the average workload handled on the cloud. And importantly, in common with other business transformations, only 33% of cloud transformations meet their expected results. We will talk about why that is and what to do about it later in the series. So, how much of what you currently do is through the cloud? I always find it helpful to think about complex concepts in the context of what I do every day. And everybody in finance uses Excel. So where is your Excel? Is it on the desktop, on the company server, on the cloud, or is it both local and on the cloud? Well, the answer is everywhere. There are different Excel versions that include both desktop and cloud versions. Most businesses now use Office 365, which is the version that has all of the latest features available. And in fact, the automation applications I will demo later in this series all use the latest functionality in Office 365. But where your Excel is depends. Many businesses now use remote desktops, which means that any Excel applications loaded there will be remote. I have Office 365 and I use the desktop version. However, all of the application updates and all of the repairs to my desktop app happen on the cloud. I also use Excel functionality called Power Query, which is a data extract, transform, and load tool. And Power Query can handle big data, and all of the big data processing in Power Query happens on the cloud, even though the application is on my desktop. I used to do data cleanses with VBA in Excel, and files with hundreds of thousands of rows could take hours to process on my desktop. Power Query can process many complex transformations in minutes through the cloud. Now let's turn to perhaps the most exciting aspect of our intro, and that is artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is simply the computer's ability to process data intelligently by mimicking the reasoning and behavior of living beings. When we talk about or think about what computers do, which aspects of this would be artificial intelligence? The pyramid here illustrates the level of how smart these applications are. At the bottom is robotic process automation. In fact, RPA is perhaps something that you've heard a lot about because it is so prevalent now in finance and business process automation applications and platforms. However, the RPA piece is actually at the bottom of the pyramid. RPA uses computers' ability to execute routine tasks based on specific, structured, and logical rules. It is the lowest level of the pyramid and the least intelligent application because it is entirely dependent on the quality of the rules that humans produce. These rules tell computers exactly what, when, and how to do something. They must include error handling and all patterns of behavior. Unpredictable events may cause errors, and computers do not learn from them. At the next level, computers are capable of solving problems without specific instructions, and they can, at this point, adapt to unpredictable circumstances. They can self-manage and make decisions based on high-level policies created by humans. The systems will continuously check their status and adapt to changing conditions, which reduces system management complexity, which is really the purpose of these autonomous applications. Next, we have cognitive computing. This is the level where computers can analyze data without any specific direction from humans, including high-level policies or specific task instructions. These systems simulate human reasoning and behavior. They learn and reason from their interactions with human beings and experiences in their environment. They use large amounts of data and build their own algorithms using data mining, pattern recognition, natural language processing, machine and deep learning, and neural networks. Face and fraud detection are examples of practical applications. And finally, we have the top level of artificial intelligence, which augments human thinking to solve complex problems, predict outcomes, and importantly, make independent decisions. At this level, AI finds patterns, hidden information, and previously unknown solutions. And this is used a lot in finance, for example, in trading platforms. Another example of this is self-driving cars. What other applications or examples of AI can you think about in your current work and in finance? Of course, they might be RPA platforms like we mentioned. They might be insights you get from Power BI. They might be optical character recognition, natural language processing, predictive analytics in CPM, XPM, and FP&A software. LinkedIn is another example where it tries to create patterns out of your interactions with its material, identifying your skills, jobs that are a good fit, as well as suggestions for your network. So we saw that at the top of the pyramid, computers look for insights and either provide them to humans or make their own decisions based on them. Insights are a function of data quality and quantity. This is why data strategies are the foundation for any digital transformation, cloud computing, or AI strategy. As more data is better, they're best collected from the entire organization. However, the data collected should also be of high quality, verified, and relevant. AI is done with the use of machine learning, which is the computer's ability to find patterns in data without explicit directions. Some of the technologies, such as artificial neural networks, is based on biological systems, that is, the brain. However, major differences exist. For example, artificial neural networks do not have neural plasticity. That is, they're static and they cannot change and grow on their own. Neural plasticity and novel problem solving are a core element of human intelligence, allowing us to solve problems with little experience and to fundamentally change our thinking patterns, beliefs, skills, and behavior. This is the aspect that is currently beyond the reach of computers and where human contribution is so important. The adjective deep in deep learning refers to the use of multiple layers in a network. For example, in image processing, lower layers may identify edges, while higher layers may identify the concepts relevant to a human, such as digits, letters, faces, or images. This concludes my contribution to the conceptual portion of the slides. I hope that it will make your conversations with IT and data professionals more intuitive, so together you can successfully drive an innovation in cross-functional teams.
Okay, that was great, Elena. I do have one question for you, though. What tools and technologies in the cloud and AI space do you see as being important for finance now and in the future?
Great question. It has certainly been the space where there's been a lot of innovation. And one of the primary trends we're seeing is the adoption of cloud software in finance is becoming much more business driven. So it's no longer developed within just the finance function. It is driven off the business needs, and then finance acts as a supporter or a business partner with the implementation of that type of software. And that includes planning software, so corporate performance management, and FP&A software. The business takes a lot more ownership over the product within. And then the cloud allows for better integration with other operational software, better integration with the GL software. And so that is one area where we're seeing a lot of change in finance. Again, better integrated with the business, with the capabilities that are produced or provided by the cloud. Of course, we're also seeing much more user-defined improve or software adoption, and that might be RPA software where users can program or assist with automating their own tasks. And that, of course, is very significantly used in finance these days. It is related to data management, manipulation, and visualization. Again, the cloud allows for that to be refreshed on demand and integrate with a variety of different systems and data sources. Again, allowing for that connection between finance and operations. Finally, also technology products like Microsoft Office have evolved significantly to allow for process automation at the desktop level much more effectively than in the past. And again, data there is processed on the cloud and users can automate their tasks much more effectively. So these are the areas that I have seen where I have seen significant adoption of tools and technology, which is enabled by the cloud.
All right. Well, thanks for that.
And likewise, I have a question for you, Linda.
Oh, okay.
And we talk about data being so foundational to this discussion and to implement the implementation of these technologies. So in your experience, how would data governance have to change to enable these transformations?
Well, that's something that's already underway in a lot of organizations, I've noticed in the last little while. It becomes more of a team effort, if you will. And those teams are populated by the stakeholders who obviously have an interest in the data. And as you said, there's so much more data to use, available to use, how it's defined and what its meaning is. Any data element, data grouping, or data set may have multiple interpretations for whoever's using it. And so there's a lot of interest about how that data is stored. And so the big shift that I see over and over again, certainly in the last 10 years, 5 for sure, is the shift from being sort of an order maker, order taker of IT and data services in the past to being an active participant at the table. Now, what that means for folks is that there's a lot more time spent talking about it than for everyone, including IT. But beyond that, a lot of organizations find there's a multi-year settling in period in these data governance groups or governing groups, however they're structured, for folks who aren't in IT to understand how data is managed, how it's stored, and just get the hang of that. So it takes some time to get to settle into getting these groups to be effective.
Now let's move on to what this technology means for you and how the finance function has been evolving to capture the opportunities. We touched upon the inability of technology to grow, that is, to transform itself into something new. Growth and neuroplasticity are still the human realm. It is maximized when people are both instrumentally and psychologically supported in unleashing their potential. From reporting the past to analyzing the present and predicting the future, from manual tasks or insight, from policy setting and compliance to enabling cross-functional teams and shaping the company's future direction. This identity transformation is not possible without emotional and social intelligence. As more technical aspects of finance are being handled by technology, the more human aspects of organizational behavior, performance management, decision-making, influencing and empowering others, and problem-solving become more and more important for finance professionals. In recent Boyden's research, 97% of CFOs said that their influence has increased in recent years. Finance leaders who can offer essential data-based guidance and who can work well with other functions are rewarded with more influence. To be influential, it is essential to be able to motivate people to consider your ideas and insights. While modern CFOs are expected to translate numbers to opportunity, as noted by Boyden, it is also necessary to make the best opportunity happen through others. Both leadership and management become paramount. While both achieve results through others, I define leadership as dealing with change and opportunity, and management as dealing with complexity and getting things done. The first transformation on this slide, which is more task and work-driven, is now well recognized and almost universally accepted. However, an effective transformation like this is not possible without the second. So to sum up, finance becomes an in-house consultancy where emotional, social, and change intelligence necessary to work with others become a must and not a nice to have. With the redefined identity, the modern finance function capabilities are listed here. As finance leaders become chief performance officers, they're relying on automated internal and external reports, analytics, and insights using real-time data and dashboards. They're able to not only report, but predict and optimize performance by capturing opportunities using company-wide data and working with teams across the entire company, whose leaders assume budget and spend accountability in their functions. Having automated all routine processes, finance teams now include BI experts and data analysts who can use and build automation apps, support ad hoc and routine reporting to their entire organization, and generate business insight. With the use of AI, finance can identify outliers, predict performance, generate insights into opportunities, problems, and solutions, automate complex processes, and use computers to read and create financial statements and other written reports with numbers. How many of these capabilities does your current finance function have? And what are your mission, the why, and the strategy, the how, for finance in your company? Now let's talk more about the people and skills in finance. To get the capabilities of the modern finance function, different skill sets are required. The traditional path to finance leadership were quite often from compliance, reporting, and corporate finance roles. With finance leaders working more and more closely with operations and other functions, they're more strategic, have highly developed emotional intelligence skills, and are tech savvy. The skills that support the capabilities include creative problem solving, cross-functional communication, data analytics and BI, CPM, strategy, and core leadership skills. Ask yourself, who is fulfilling these roles in your organization? In most cases, these capabilities exist both in finance and other departments. The analytical skills already present in finance create a good fit for both bringing these capabilities to the finance function and leading cross-functional integration from finance. To be clear, though, the traditional responsibilities of finance are still there. They're just less done by people and more by technology. They may also attract different personality types, which is important for building your finance teams. Now we have an opportunity to debunk some myths about managing people. The tasks of management were first defined by a French businessman, Henri Fayot, in the early 1900s. These are the 5 components he defined. One myth is management has dramatically changed today. The reality is the fundamental tasks of management are the same today. However, how they're understood and done has evolved. The problem is many people, including many managers, misunderstand the nature of these activities. For example, controlling may be understood as controlling the behaviors of subordinates to ensure that they act in an acceptable way. However, it is simply a process for monitoring progress and taking corrective action. Commanding is not telling people what to do. It is communicating tasks and responsibilities to people and directing their work. So while the core processes have not changed, how they're shaped and executed can be very different in different environments. One of the critical elements of building the right culture is to make sure that it supports your strategy. If the strategy is to gain influence, then commanding and controlling in the sense of only telling people what to do is not going to be the culture aligned with the strategy of gaining influence. Most successful managers do not issue commands or tell people what to do. Instead, they influence the context and environment in which people get work done, and they create the conditions for people to achieve goals by providing support and making themselves available to solve problems. The bottom line is in the environment where most routine tasks are automated, there is unlimited access to information, and workforce is far more mobile and diverse in their motivations and perspectives. There needs to be a more refined and more influential approach to management. We'll return to this when we look at the change management and what is necessary for success of complex implementation projects. Now let's move to process. Kevin Scherer, former CEO of Amgen, refers to the process as the DNA of management. Management must get right the 4 processes crucial for organizational success, and those processes are decision-making, organizational learning, change management, and implementation. In this context, implementation is defined as establishing organizational goals and plans, working with people at different levels, and monitoring progress. And this definition works at any level, whether it's a company, a department, or a project. Managers accomplish results less by taking action and more by shaping the processes for doing so. So really what we're talking about for winning finance transformations is effective management through shaping processes, both the implementation process itself and the business processes within the company. So here we see the process perspective for digital initiative implementation. We take the whole company view, and leading company-wide initiatives may be an identity change for finance, which would require change management and working with various stakeholders. And when I talk about process, I do not mean rigid bureaucratic procedures. I'm talking about the enabling structure that gives you the foundation for acting. As part of this foundation, executives agree on strategic value drivers, which then shapes the outputs. And a couple of highlights here. First, assigning clear accountabilities is very important, and we'll talk more about this later. Second, when prioritizing effort, we should focus on higher risk, higher reward, strategically aligned items, rather than focusing on easy to work with, but less significant ones. Thirdly, we need to accommodate potential future changes, like growth in accounts, organizational structure changes, and system and people changes. Fourthly, with data, we must define the lowest level of data that we need and then gather it once, also referred to as the single source of the truth. This is important because if we get the lowest level of data, we can then shape it and organize it in the best way that we need for different uses. And finally, don't compromise the key overriding principles under pressure and take corrective action early. For example, do not enable the use of different data sources if a single data source is a key design feature. If we take a more agile rather than a step-based perspective on the implementation process, then we can look at the overriding principles that would shape our process. When implementing the steps in the previous slide, these principles and components form the foundation to guide management's decision-making. It is important to agree on these high-level principles and components at the steering committee level. It provides strategic direction to the initiative and ensures that it is accretive to business value. Executive discussions around these items also surface implicit assumptions people might have about the project. These assumptions, along with facts, must be discussed early to reach consensus on direction and strategy. It addresses one of the struggles people have when they move to execution, being a vague and inconsistent big picture view of the end state and the overall mission, making it more difficult to make optimal, productive, and fast decisions during execution. It has been said that good managers know what work is being done in the organization, but great managers know how it gets done. Actually, all of the W questions are important. Why, who, what, when, and how. For processes subject to transformation, one question is, well, which one should be automated? The criteria include strategic importance, process maturity, including availability of structured data, programmability, time currently spent, error risk, and the ability of the automated process to be integrated with other systems. Much of it is common sense, but for some of you, as it was for me, it might be a useful summary or reminder of these points. When something in the process is not working, many managers want to turn to technology for solutions. And while technology can come with pre-built processes, more often the problems lie with the lack of foundations within the process or accountability, which technology cannot fix. Once we have prioritized the problems to be solved, we can move to evaluating the enabling technologies. Sometimes technologies already exist within the company, so work is focused on maximizing their capabilities and expanding them to other functions or use cases. Regardless of the technology solution selected, it is helpful to keep in mind the principles on this slide. The closer the solution is to the actual use cases that people face now or in the future, the better the outcome. However, it is also important to be objective in defining use cases. They need to focus on the problem definition rather than how things are currently done, because what is currently done may not be optimal. Further problem definitions need to include potential future changes or actions like acquisitions, changes to sales strategies, products to services, changes in staff counts, etc. Some really pressing problems that trigger digital transformations are inability of systems to talk to each other, overly complex systems due to past changes that had to be accommodated ad hoc, lack of training in existing systems, and inability to meet growing requirements for internal reporting and insight in real time. The above results in people spending too much time, getting confused, and feeling that their performance is compromised. It also costs too much. If we take the process maturity view, we then progress from solving finance-specific problems like automating manual process in finance to optimizing other business processes impacted by data and manual work, and then to predicting overall business performance and generating business opportunities. Beyond level 1, this process is cross-functional and requires cross-functional teams and team charters. The goals are to reduce risk, support decision-making, determine cause and effect, predict and monitor performance, optimize cash flow and profitability, and achieve strategic goals. Some of the areas where you may allocate resources and finance transformations are listed here. As to where money should go, there is no single right answer. Formal business cases are helpful as they will evaluate where you can get the most payback soonest. Areas with the most favorable business cases will likely have most repetition in data combined with higher risk exposures, extensive manual effort, and high opportunity costs.
What might be interesting, just Elena, to add some commentary about the kinds of challenges and barriers you've seen in this recently about adopting these two technologies and making the leaps to these two technologies.
So one of the things that I mentioned talking about processes is it takes a whole company view. And to really get the full benefit of digital transformation, you cannot do this in a silo. So finance, if finance is treated as a silo, then of course, that first level of process automation and getting the digital transformation benefits implemented would occur, but really it would still have the same issues in terms of finance talking to other business units effectively. And one of the challenges that occur when the whole company view is taken is, well, what do we prioritize? And two, now we have to address all the interdependencies and everybody's needs for data and systems and processes at the same time. And that challenge can be so daunting that it significantly delays the benefits of implementation. And with any change management, if the benefits are delayed too far, then levels of adoption drop and levels of engagement drop. So this balance between implementing things enough to meet the needs of cross-functional stakeholders to realize the short-term benefits, and then continuing to build requirements that are holistic for the organization is probably one of the biggest challenges that I have seen in implementing this technology. Waiting too long is usually the result, and it's not the most optimal one.
Yeah, that rings a few bells for me for sure.
I'm going to expand on Elena's comments regarding the levels of digital transformation and what it takes to move between those three stages she was describing. But I'll be describing them in terms of capability maturity or capability maturity leaps. Although we're focusing on data and data management and data integration when we talk about cloud computing and AI, ultimately the point of applying these technologies is to create a resilient and agile business environment that succeeds in this new post-millennium conditions of frequent radical change occurring at higher and higher speeds. Now, cloud computing, while a different method of consuming IT services, still requires oversight to ensure that the needs of the business are being met effectively or in the most productive ways, whether that's desktop, business intelligence, reporting, or predictive analytics. Because cloud computing allows for a different kind of agility in the provision of IT services, the involvement of the business is now constant going forward rather than at certain points in time. The application, in particular, of AI to financial modeling accelerates the cycle of modeling work whereby more and greater variety of outcomes can be pursued in tandem or in nonlinear ways. Together, these two technologies, cloud and AI, propel the need for a sophisticated governance and oversight in order of magnitude ways. As many organizations have technology architecture that is decades old, the leaps in capability and maturity are needed there that are greater than perhaps other business functions or other industries, in fact. IT, by the same token, elevates their work from asset management to architecture, strategy, and greater governance, evolution of governance. So there's a lot to do to rise to the opportunities and challenges of cloud computing and AI in finance, and the capabilities to develop fall along the 5 dimensions here, and I'm just going to talk about those for a moment. To simplify the discussion of capability maturity and demonstrate just how tightly intertwined IT capability maturity is with business capability maturity, I'm going to talk about these leaps in capability maturity in these two groupings or categories. So it's important to say at this point that every finance organization has strengths in many of the 5 dimensions of business capability maturity I mentioned in the introduction to this section. What is compelling about cloud computing and AI is that the transition to using them effectively is determined by how far to the right each of the capabilities in the organization are. The more mature the capability along operations management, organizational change, and the ability to transform the finance operation is, the greater and faster they will get the value out of cloud computing and AI. But more importantly, the more sophisticated the capability of finance organization, the better they'll be able to manage the risks associated with applying cloud computing and AI solutions. Wrestle them into a tool set that propels the organization forward and elevates the work people do at all levels. To get the value and also manage the risks effectively will require an alignment and a synchronization between IT capability maturity and finance operations capability maturity. It is this truth that tips the balance in taking a studied and deliberate approach to building capability maturity in both business operations and IT operations. In particular, aiming for key adjustments not only in skills, but in mindset and approach to work and work relationships at all levels. More about this topic in my next topic. The map in this diagram then attempts to align the leaps in capability maturity of information technology with the leaps in capability and maturity in business operations. With many financial services organizations, corporations, and internal functions not yet on the capability maturity map, the distance they will need to go to make effective use of cloud computing and AI is dramatic. While this seems overwhelming to consider, each organization will already have strengths in some aspects, and like anything, the emphasis is on starting to develop some aspects that make sense, and have a plan for building out others. The opportunities for individuals and careers here should not be underestimated. Everyone participates in data management and governance, and technology and tools management and governance. These are considered assets like never before, and treated as such in financial terms. What this means is that IT is always at the table, so learning to speak tech is an important success differentiator. IT, actuarial, and accounting have roots in mathematics and logic, and so this should prove to be easier than at first glance. There are two critical success factors or keys that unlock success here. The first is change-making capability, and the second, leadership capability. If only these two dimensions are built up, the others will develop more easily. Other business functions and industries already working at a higher capability maturity will have built this in the early days of the step change in speed and interconnectedness of the new millennium socioeconomic context. And they'll need to unpick or disassemble some elements of that to take on new cloud computing and AI approaches, whereas finance has the advantage of, in large part, building their capability and sophistication in governance specifically for cloud and AI. A guide to developing people and organizational structures to support more sophisticated governance practices and oversight is shown in the middle of the map here. It's no secret that the root of all business transformation is to move the organization along the three success strategy trajectories from machine to human, organization, identity, and culture orientation, from manual to automated at deeper and deeper layers of processing, and from siloed and linear work forms and throughput strategies to multidimensional and interconnected ones. In simple terms, organizations will match the speed, agility, and interconnectedness of the new millennium world the farther right they are able to go along the three trajectories. However, this can't be accomplished without corresponding capability maturity development and the embracing of cloud computing and AI solutions, particularly in finance.
Thanks, Linda. This was very interesting. And on this point, aside from talking about skills, what shifts in the mindset and ways of working together do you see occurring now with the adoption of these technologies?
Well, I think the nuances for finance people are going to be very different going forward. There's going to be sort of less of a finish line and more continuous work, continuous processing of the work rather than the go, stop, go patterns of today. And I think there's going to be maybe some stretching needed to embrace the fact that there's more gray and less black and white in that, more iterative work rather than that one shot at success. And along those lines, there'll be less individual accomplishment and less individual celebration of individual accomplishment. And it's safe to say that people will begin to work in a collaborative way, yes, but that should extend very soon into full-on co-creation. So there'll be this need of a shift for perfection and being right
into embracing error and trial and error. And of course, along with that, a shift into greater empathy and forgiveness, for lack of a better word. And away especially from punitive kinds of motivation. Now, by extension, we can anticipate that there'll be a shift from performance and accomplishment to learning and teaching following this iterative pattern, and that'll be the norm and a measure of success. And more than that, it'll be the way for people to achieve growth and to achieve predictability of results.
Thank you. Completely agree with that, especially for those organizations that aspire to be true learning organizations that truly innovate, and that is part of their strategy for doing business. So thank you for that.
My pleasure.